Good morning, everybody, on this August 24th, 2017. It's going to be a great day today. I can just feel it. It's Thursday. It's one day away from that Friday, that illustrious Friday that we like to be able to experience, to be able to kick off and go spend some time with family, friends, all kinds of different stuff that we do on the weekends. So something that I wanted to talk about today that I really put a lot of thought into yesterday, I just posted it on my blog, and I'm going to be putting it on Connect and everything else, is around preparation. You know, I was driving back and I was probably about 2.5 hours, 3 hours on the road yesterday. And I was just contemplating and looking over my journey and seeing exactly where I'm at with everything. So I recently received my MBA, and I was thinking about how much time and effort that I put into schoolwork, right? And I was thinking how much studies that I did, how much preparation that I did, how many papers that I wrote, how much references that I had to dive into, different things like that. And I was thinking to myself how much work that really took, and energy and time and focus and reflection. And each class that I was in, I could use one thing that I might have done really well in a class for the next class that was going on, or et cetera, et cetera. So I was able to move forward and pay it forward and use some of the skill sets that were there for me to be successful throughout my whole entire journey. So that was schoolwork, right? And then I remember when I first got into my job at where I work right now, and the role that I'm currently in is kind of like an area manager of all these different stores that are all throughout the state. I had to put some good time and effort into training, not only around the business side of the house of learning about profits and losses and those kind of things, and payroll and P&Ls and all kinds of stuff, but I also had to do some training on the skill set of emotional intelligence and really learning how to read people and talk to people and have those conversations with people. So there was a lot of work that I had to do, a lot of groundwork that I had to do in preparation and training and those kind of things. And so I was thinking to myself, all of those hours that I spent in both schoolwork and in work related situations, I feel like I was really preparing myself for what was going to happen in the future for those things. And I feel like I'm well prepared based on the fact that I really hunkered down and studied and focused and really put the effort in that was necessary. Well, then I started to flip the script a little bit as I was driving, and I'm contemplating, and I got the radio going and the music going, and I turned it down, and I was getting in some really good thoughts here. And what I thought about was, do I do the same thing for my health journey? Do I learn from my mistakes of the past, or do I use those situations that I've been through in the past as being learning, as being those situations where I'm looking for reference books, or I'm looking for materials online, or I'm trying to study to be able to prepare myself for whatever happens in the future? That's the real key to everything here, isn't it? I mean, if we continue to go down the road of making the same exact mistakes over and over and over again, what happens? We're going to slide back into who we were before we started to get healthy and started to really move down this road. How many situations have you heard of somebody that even though they lost weight, they leave and they put weight right back on, if not double the amount, and come back and feel guilty and feel, defeated and those kind of things. And so they start working that cycle back again, and they start to focus, and they may lose some more weight, and they may gain it back. And it's a roller coaster. I know I've been on this roller coaster over and over and over again. Time after time, I keep on having to go back and focus on some of the things that I know worked in the past. So one of the things that I remember that I did when I was in schoolwork, when I was studying for my MBA, and then also while I was at work, was I took a lot of notes. I have a lot of notebooks that I wrote down tidbits and thoughts and moments, and I just captured situations so that way I could lean back in on those to remember what I was thinking, what I was going through, and how I was feeling at those moments in times. So think about that. If you could write down things of what you're thinking at that time, how you're feeling is a big one. That's the most important one, because if you can figure out how you're feeling at certain situations, and we'll go into a little bit more about the health related stuff in a second, but I always wrote down how I was feeling if I was overwhelmed with a certain topic or I was overwhelmed with a subject, but I ended up studying harder for certain things that I wasn't necessarily comprehending or understanding as well. So for me, I always had to put the work in on the back end, and I took notes everywhere. I filled books worth of notes. I have notebooks still filled with all these things, and I still tap into those every once in a while if something comes up in business that I need to remember, or a situation of how how I battled through certain things, because our brains aren't really capable of remembering all the different situations that we've been through. So I've started to do, and I started to incorporate a little bit of the same exact thing when I first started my health journey here with Weight Watchers, and then all of the different situations that I'm a part of. And as I'm writing things down and I'm journaling, I'm really writing down specifics around those types of situations that are going on. So, for instance, when my grandfather passed this last summer, how did I respond? There was food there. Did I eat food, or did I eat all the food that was there? Did I eat my feelings? How was I feeling? What was I going through? What was my mental capacity? How was I navigating the situation? Was I even being cognizant of it, or was I just diving right into that plate of whatever it was that was there and just not really caring at that moment in time? And if I did that, how was I feeling afterwards? And what did I do to be able to navigate the post part of that, right? So part of what I'm saying here is that if you haven't started journaling, if you haven't started writing down some of the things that you go through every day, or if you haven't started to learn from maybe mistakes or victories or anything like that, and really start to prepare yourself for whatever's going to be coming in the future, you really should start. Even if you're not a good writer, even if you're a bullet point person and you put a little bullet point down and say, stressed out today, ate cake. Stressed out today, ate this, that, and the other. Stressed out today, and I didn't eat cake, and this is why. Or I navigated through. And you're building your armor. You're building your case of who you are as a person trying to be healthy. It's really important to prepare yourself for whatever's going to happen in the future. Because as we all know, life deals us really crappy cards sometimes. It really does. And it all part of who we are, and part of what some of the issues that we've had in the past is when life deals those cards, we've dealt with them through food, through eating, through my addiction to having something that's going to feel like it's curbing that pain, or being able to put those feelings off to the side of the road for me to be able to get through the things that I have to. So the reason I share that is because if you aren't journaling now, if you aren't writing down and taking inventory of the things that you're feeling and the things that you're doing, then what you're doing is you might just be cycling through life. You might just be cycling through and going through situations and then moving on and then going to the next situation. And then when something happens very similar like that down the road, you may not be as prepared as you might think you should be. Right? Or you're going to do the same exact thing you did before because you didn't reflect on it. You didn't kind of take a look at it to see where you're at with everything. Now, this is easier said than done because life happens and things happen, and journaling isn't the number one priority of everybody. And a lot of people don't really like to journal or do diary entries or things like that. But I feel like if you can, think about it, if you can write a book that's going to be based on your life so far, that can help prepare you to be the best version of you in the future, why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you give yourself a reference point, like when you're in school and you're reading encyclopedias? Kids, encyclopedias were big brown books that were filled with lots of information, much like all you do now is when you say to Google and Siri and you go through all your different situations. Back in the day, we used to read things like encyclopedias and books. Anyway, I digress. So how much would it help you if you had the ability to be able to have a reference book, have a reference point for you to be able to be prepared for any situation that's going to be coming around, or to be at least be better prepared for it, because we're never going to have all the answers. But if you have how you felt, how you navigated, and what you did behaviorally wise when something bad happened in the past, I feel like you can really set yourself up for something that's going to be successful in the future. When something like that happens again, how did I respond? Well, if I responded that way, how can I do it a little differently this time? If it was a failure, or if I was successful in something that I did in the past, and I was able to navigate through it, and here's how I felt when I was successful, maybe I can lean in on my positives and lean in on the fact that I want to feel like that again. I want to have that euphoric feeling of knowing that I was successful with navigating the binge. You know, I always talk about the fact that I'm a food addict. And I always talk about the fact that I battle and I'm always on the verge of a binge all the time. And most of my successes have come from when I navigated that binge that I wanted to be able to go into. So whether it was comfort level of being around family and everybody eating, heavy foods and all that stuff, or whether it was in the break room at work where people would bring in glazed donuts, Krispy Kreme donuts, Dunkin' Donuts, whatever, Boston cream, and they would layer it all over the whole entire table. And I navigated through it and I thought about it. Or I also might have only had half a donut. And I counted it and I tracked it and I moved on and I felt successful. I felt empowered at that moment in time because I felt like, okay, I want to be able to curb my appetite of having it. So I had a small portion of it to be able to curb that and be able to move on. So that's a win, right? And if that's a win, that's something that I want to be able to jot that down. We have this phrase at my work whenever we work with different agent owner partners or people that own businesses and we work with them. And a lot of times when we're talking about the business, yes, I've got all kinds of data, I've got all kinds of graphs, I got kinds of information, numbers, crunches, all kinds of stuff that I've got that I'm bringing to the table, and I've got it all lined up and I'm ready to go. So when I'm sitting having a conversation with somebody about their business and what they're passionate about, a lot of times you want to make it their own. So if you have data that you have, you can help to reinforce that information. But if an owner or somebody starts to say something like, well, we did this in the past that worked really well with this, that, and the other, down and say, I want to write that down because that's an important piece to your success. It's the same concept here. If you did something that was successful, you might want to write that down. If you did something that wasn't successful, or you felt like you fell off the rails based on a feeling, based on an urge, based on the situation or whatever, you might want to write that down too. There are certain people on this program and in this health journey, even on No Finish Line Nation, that I see people post some of their journal entries. Beautiful, colorful, wonderful journal entries that are filled with all kinds of data, whether it's spiritual or whether it's business minded or whether it's just the overall feeling of what am I going to do today to make today better than it was yesterday. Think about it if you can. If you haven't started it yet, think about grabbing a little bindered notebook and just start journaling. And even if it's one sentence or it's two sentences or whatever, you're not a great writer, it's okay. A lot of people do it because they're like, well, I'm not a journal type of person. I'm not really that reflective about things. But if you keep it fact oriented, you don't need to be reflective. You can just write down specifics. This is how I responded. This is how I acted. This is how this was the outcome of the situation. And this is the thing that helped me to move forward. Because remember, we're only building for the future. Like literally, we're working on ourselves now to be better prepared for what's going to come in the future. Somebody asked me the other day, what's your driving force to losing a total of 100 pounds? And I lost 46.5 pounds on this Liquid Shano user ID on Weight Watchers, but I've lost it to over 100 pounds total. And when you think about that, they ask me, what's your driving force? And I always say something to the effect of, is a couple of them, right? One of them is I want to grow old with my wife. And then the other one is I want to be there for my son with sports and those kind of things. And I want to be around for a long time. Think about those. Both of those statements are future statements. Those are things that I want to do in the future. So why not give myself something in preparation for what that's going to look like in the future? Give myself a reference book, a encyclopedia, a dictionary, or some sort of Shane's Bible of what he needs to do moving forward or what he needs to look at moving forward. I'm only writing my own story, and I need to make sure that if I'm writing those thoughts down, I can really start to reference back to those every single time. And what I would recommend when you do it, if you do start the journaling, you do start taking this advice and you start moving forward, just put a little title at the top of the page of what that might have looked like. So the date could be on there, but maybe you write down birthday cake or write down work stress or family passing or whatever the situation is, just to give you some little tags that you can open up to so you can refer back to specific situations that are going on. I hope that helps you. I know journaling has always helped me, and I get better and better as I progress because I wasn't a very great writer at first, but I've become a much better writer and more succinct and be able to be bullet pointed that I know what I'm really looking for. Remember, what you do today is only setting yourself up for success in the future. Whether what you learn from failure or what you learn from success today will only help you tomorrow get to the things and do the things that you want to do and be successful in everything that you're trying to accomplish. Have a great day, everybody. We'll talk later. Thanks.